Welcome to True Crime Stories, where we explore the most shocking and gripping true crime tales. Today we're diving into a story of forbidden love, hidden secrets, and a bloody betrayal that tore a family apart. Imagine a seemingly perfect family dinner, but beneath the surface lies a web of deceit and passion that would soon end in murder. How far would you go for love? And what happens when that love turns deadly? Stay with us as we unravel the twisted tale of a sister's secret affair with her brother-in-law that ends in a brutal betrayal. Our story begins in the quiet suburb of Livingston, New Jersey, a community known for its tree-lined streets and peaceful neighborhoods. But behind the doors of one home at 243 Elm Street, secrets festered like a ticking time bomb. A love triangle between two sisters and a brother-in-law would soon explode into a scandal that no one saw coming. On the night of November 14, 2022, a series of events unfolded that would leave one person dead, two lives shattered, and a community reeling. Meet Lucy Adams, a 29-year-old elementary school teacher who always lived in the shadow of her older sister, Emma. Emma Adams, 32, was everything Lucy wasn't: a successful corporate lawyer, beautiful, confident, and married to the charismatic investment banker Mark Johnson. But beneath Emma's polished exterior, her marriage was crumbling, and Lucy, feeling neglected and envious, found herself drawn to Mark's charm. What started as innocent conversations quickly turned into secret rendezvous, and before long, the affair spiraled into a passionate, all-consuming love. But what neither Lucy nor Mark realized was how dangerous their forbidden love would become. As Lucy and Mark's affair intensified, Emma began to sense that something was terribly wrong. She noticed the stolen glances, the subtle touches, the hushed conversations that would abruptly end whenever she entered the room. Emma was no fool. She knew that trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. And on that fateful November night, her suspicions were confirmed in the worst possible way. What followed was a confrontation that escalated into a violent struggle, leaving Emma dead on the floor, her lifeblood staining the home they had once shared. This is not just a story of a crime, it's a tale of human frailty, the pursuit of forbidden desires, and the ultimate price of betrayal. Our story centers on three key players, each with their own motivations, secrets, and flaws. At the heart of this tragic tale is Lucy Adams, a 29-year-old elementary school teacher whose life has always been defined by her role as the younger sister. Lucy grew up in the shadow of her older sister, Emma Adams, constantly feeling like she was never good enough. While Emma excelled in everything: school, sports, and later her career as a corporate lawyer, Lucy found solace in simpler joys, often overlooked and underestimated. Despite her sweet and caring nature, Lucy harbored a deep-seated envy of Emma's seemingly perfect life, especially her marriage to Mark Johnson. Emma Adams, 32, was the epitome of success: confident, beautiful, and fiercely ambitious. She thrived in her high-powered job as a corporate lawyer, known for her razor-sharp mind and ability to win even the toughest cases. Emma's life appeared picture-perfect, complete with her marriage to Mark Johnson, a 35-year-old investment banker whose charm and charisma made him the ideal partner in the eyes of their social circle. To everyone else, they were the couple that had it all: a beautiful home, successful careers, and a promising future. But behind the perfect facade, Emma's marriage was far from flawless. Beneath the polished smiles and public displays of affection, Emma and Mark's relationship was unraveling. Mark, who was initially drawn to Emma's strength and independence, began to feel suffocated by her controlling nature. Emma's career demanded long hours and unwavering focus, leaving Mark feeling neglected and unappreciated. Their marriage, once filled with passion and shared dreams, had become a battleground of unmet expectations and silent resentment. Emma's constant drive for perfection extended into every corner of their life, leaving little room for mistakes or vulnerability. Mark Johnson, at 35, was at a crossroads in his life. On the surface, he was the perfect husband: supportive, successful, and sociable. But inside, Mark was struggling with his own demons. He felt trapped in a loveless marriage and was desperate for an escape, a way to reclaim the excitement and passion that had long since faded. That's when Lucy entered the picture. In Lucy, Mark found the attention and adoration that he craved. She was the opposite of Emma, gentle, supportive, and eager to make him feel valued. As their affair deepened, so did the risks. Lucy, driven by a desire to finally have something of her own, clung to Mark as her escape from the shadows of her sister's success. For Mark, Lucy represented freedom and the promise of a fresh start. But as with all forbidden affairs, the thrill came with a cost. They began to take bigger risks, meeting at Mark and Emma's home when Emma was at work, exchanging increasingly daring texts and calls. And Emma, ever perceptive, began to notice the cracks in her once perfect life. Emma's intuition was sharp. She noticed the changes in Mark's behavior, the sudden excuses, the unexplained absences. Determined to save her marriage, Emma began to dig deeper. She checked Mark's phone, scrutinized his social media, and even questioned his colleagues. It was a desperate attempt to uncover the truth that she already feared. As the days passed, Emma's suspicions grew into a consuming obsession, and the tension in the Johnson household reached a boiling point, with every conversation between Emma and Mark becoming a battlefield of accusations and denials. Emma's intuition told her that Lucy was involved, but she couldn't prove it until that fateful night when everything came crashing down. The idyllic streets of Livingston, New Jersey would never be the same. On the cold night of November 14, 2022, the quiet suburb of Livingston, New Jersey, was shattered by a horrific crime. Inside the Johnsons' upscale home at 243 Elm Street, what began as a tense confrontation quickly spiraled into crux. Emma Adams, having spent weeks consumed by suspicion and paranoia, finally decided to confront Mark about his affair. But what she didn't expect was to find Lucy there too. Emma's worst fears were confirmed as she caught her sister and husband in a compromising position, and what followed was a deadly mix of rage, betrayal, and desperation. Emma had spent the day at work, her mind racing with suspicions. That night she came home early, hoping to catch Mark off guard. She wasn't expecting to see Lucy, her own sister, in her home, seated at her dining table. The air was thick with tension as Emma demanded answers. Accusations flew across the room, voices escalated, and the fragile facade of their lives came crashing down. Emma, now face to face with the truth, lunged at Lucy in a fit of rage. Mark, caught in the middle, tried to separate them, but the situation was already out of control. In the midst of the chaos, Mark grabbed a kitchen knife, shouting at both women to calm down. But in the heat of the moment, Emma grabbed the nearest object, a glass vase, and hurled it towards Lucy. Mark, in a panic, stepped between them, and in the struggle, the knife went plunging into Emma's side. Blood splattered across the kitchen floor, the once pristine space now a gruesome crime scene. Emma fell to the ground, gasping for breath, as Mark and Lucy stood frozen, staring at the blood-soaked knife still in Mark's hand. Neighbors reported hearing Emma's screams, followed by a deafening silence. Police received the 911 call at 10:18 p.m. from Mark, his voice shaking as he claimed it was all an accident. "She just fell on the knife," he repeated over and over, his words laced with panic and disbelief. When officers arrived at the scene at 10:22 p.m., they found Emma unresponsive on the kitchen floor, her body surrounded by a pool of blood. Lucy was in shock, unable to speak, while Mark sat on the floor, his hands still trembling. Detective James Collins, a seasoned investigator known for his meticulous approach, took charge of the case. From the moment he stepped into the Johnsons' home, Collins knew something was off. The scene told a story of chaos and conflict, but Collins was determined to piece together what really happened. As the forensic team began their work, Collins interviewed Mark and Lucy separately. Mark maintained that it was a tragic accident, but Lucy's version of events was more fragmented. She described a struggle, a flash of silver, and then the sickening realization of what had occurred. Detective Collins carefully examined the kitchen, noting the scattered objects, the blood trail, and the position of Emma's body. The knife lay on the floor, its handle slick with blood, and Collins couldn't help but notice the small details: the angle of the wound, the defensive cuts on Emma's hands, and the bloody footprints leading away from her body. He knew these details could reveal the truth hidden behind Mark's panicked narrative. One key piece of evidence was the shattered picture frame of Emma and Mark, its glass shards mixed with blood on the kitchen floor. To Collins, it symbolized the literal and figurative breaking of their relationship, a poignant reminder of the night's tragic outcome. The forensic team also found Emma's phone, which had continued recording throughout the altercation. The audio captured the escalating argument, the sounds of objects being thrown, and ultimately, Emma's anguished cry. It was a chilling testament to the events that unfolded in those final moments. Mark's demeanor shifted from grief-stricken to defensive as the questioning continued. He insisted that Emma's death was an accident, that he never intended to hurt her. But Collins wasn't convinced. Lucy's behavior raised further suspicion. She was uncharacteristically calm, her responses rehearsed and detached. As Collins reviewed the evidence, a chilling pattern emerged, one that suggested this was no mere accident, but a confrontation that had spiraled into a calculated act of violence. The knife, the shattered vase, the blood-stained floor, they all painted a picture of a crime born out of desperation and betrayal. As the investigation progressed, the evidence began to mount against Mark and Lucy. The knife was tested for fingerprints, revealing both Mark's and Lucy's prints on the handle. Forensic analysis of the blood spatter indicated that the fatal wound was inflicted during a direct struggle, contradicting Mark's claim that Emma fell onto the knife. Collins also uncovered text messages between Mark and Lucy that hinted at their plans to end the complications in their lives, a chilling foreshadowing of Emma's death. With the evidence piling up, Collins faced the daunting task of untangling the truth. Was this a spontaneous crime of passion, or was it a premeditated act disguised as a domestic accident? As the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, one thing became clear: this love triangle was far more sinister than anyone had imagined. And Emma's death was not just a tragic accident, it was the ultimate betrayal. The initial shock of Emma's death quickly gave way to a complex investigation that would test the skills and intuition of Detective James Collins, a seasoned detective with over 20 years of experience. Collins had seen his share of domestic disputes turn deadly, but something about this case felt different, more calculated, more sinister. From the moment Collins arrived at the Johnsons' home, he sensed that this was more than just a tragic accident. It was a web of deceit woven from lies, secrets, and forbidden love. Collins began by reconstructing the events of that fateful night, meticulously piecing together every detail. The crime scene told a story of chaos and conflict, but the forensic evidence hinted at something deeper. The angle of Emma's wound, the defensive marks on her hands, and the blood spatter patterns all pointed to a struggle that wasn't as simple as Mark claimed. Collins noted these discrepancies, knowing that the physical evidence would be crucial in unraveling the truth. During his initial interviews, Collins noticed stark differences in the accounts given by Mark and Lucy. Mark, visibly distraught, maintained that Emma's death was a tragic accident, a moment of panic gone horribly wrong. His hands shook as he described the knife slipping in the chaos, his voice cracking with what seemed like genuine regret. But Collins wasn't swayed. He had seen too many suspects crumble under the weight of their own guilt to take Mark's words at face value. Lucy's interview, however, struck a different chord. Unlike Mark, she was eerily calm, her answers concise and measured. Collins couldn't shake the feeling that Lucy had rehearsed her. She described Emma's outburst, the ensuing struggle, and the knife's accidental plunge with a detachment that raised red flags. Collins pressed her for details, hoping to catch her in a contradiction. But Lucy held her ground. Her composure only deepened Collins's suspicion that there was more to this story than a simple accident. As the days turned into weeks, Collins dove deeper into the lives of Mark, Lucy, and Emma, uncovering a complex web of relationships and hidden motives. Digital forensics revealed a trove of damning evidence, text messages between Mark and Lucy that spoke of ending their misery, internet searches on how to stage a crime scene, and even draft emails that Mark had started writing to his lawyer about a potential divorce. Each discovery painted a darker picture of a couple not just caught in an illicit affair, but actively plotting to remove the obstacle in their path, Emma. One key piece of evidence was Lucy's diary, found tucked away in her apartment. In it, she chronicled her growing obsession with Mark, her frustration with always being in Emma's shadow, and her longing for a life where she wasn't the second choice. As Collins read through the entries, it became clear that Lucy's feelings for Mark went far beyond a simple affair. They were rooted in years of jealousy and a deep-seated desire to finally have something that was truly hers. The diary also detailed her conversations with Mark, hinting at plans to confront Emma, though Lucy never explicitly mentioned violence. Still, the implications were there, lurking between the lines. As Collins pieced together the timeline, he discovered that the affair had begun nearly a year before Emma's death. Mark and Lucy had initially tried to keep their relationship discreet, but as their feelings intensified, so did the risks they were willing to take. Surveillance footage from a local cafe showed the two meeting frequently, their interactions growing increasingly intimate and bold. Phone records revealed late-night calls and texts, often just minutes after Emma had left for work or gone to bed. It was clear that Mark and Lucy were living a double life, one built on lies and deception. Collins's investigation also uncovered financial records that pointed to another motive: greed. Mark, facing mounting debt from failed investments and lifestyle expenses, had taken out a sizable life insurance policy on Emma just months before her death. The policy, worth over $1 million, named Mark as the sole beneficiary. This revelation added a chilling layer to the case. Emma's death wasn't just about removing an emotional obstacle, it was also a financial windfall that could solve Mark's problems and allow him to start fresh with Lucy. As Collins continued to build his case, he knew he needed more than circumstantial evidence. He needed a confession or a breakthrough that would definitively tie Mark and Lucy to Emma's death in a way that couldn't be explained away as an accident. Collins decided to play a psychological game, subtly letting Mark and Lucy know that he was closing in on the truth. He leaked selective pieces of evidence to the press, hoping to create tension between the two suspects. The plan worked. Mark, already under immense pressure, began to crack. He started to distance himself from Lucy, fearing that she might turn on him to save herself. Finally, after weeks of relentless questioning and strategic pressure, Collins got his break. During a particularly intense interrogation, Mark's facade crumbled. He admitted that he and Lucy had talked about how easy life would be without Emma, though he stopped short of confessing to premeditated murder. Mark's partial admission was enough to prompt Collins to dig deeper into Lucy's role. He called Lucy in for a follow-up interview, armed with Mark's words and the mounting evidence. But Lucy, sensing the walls closing in, maintained her innocence, insisting that she had nothing to do with Emma's death beyond being a helpless witness to a tragic accident. With both Mark and Lucy now squarely in his sights, Collins knew he was on the verge of solving the case. He brought in psychological experts to analyze the suspect's behavior, looking for signs of guilt, deception, or manipulation. Their findings supported Collins's theory. Mark and Lucy were complicit in a plan that went horribly wrong, a plan that they had initially convinced themselves was just hypothetical. But when the opportunity presented itself, emotions took over, and the lines between thought and action blurred. Emma's death was the tragic result of their inability to separate fantasy from reality. Collins compiled all his findings into a comprehensive report, presenting a timeline of events that showed a clear pattern of intent and conspiracy. The evidence was damning text messages that hinted at murder, financial motives that pointed to greed, and a psychological profile that revealed a couple willing to do whatever it took to be together. The prosecutor, armed with Collins's meticulous investigation, prepared to bring charges of first-degree murder against Mark and Lucy. The stage was set for a courtroom battle that would lay bare the darkest corners of human desire and the ultimate price of betrayal. The trial of Mark Johnson and Lucy Adams began on March 15, 2023, drawing intense media attention and public interest. It was the perfect storm of scandal, a love triangle gone wrong, a high-profile family torn apart, and a brutal murder in an affluent neighborhood. The courtroom was packed, with every seat filled by journalists, curious locals, and those who simply couldn't resist the allure of a real-life drama unfolding before their eyes. As the prosecution laid out its case, the narrative was clear: this was not a tragic accident, but a calculated murder driven by lust, jealousy, and greed. Prosecutor Daniel Reed, known for his sharp wit and relentless pursuit of justice, painted a vivid picture of premeditation. He walked the jury through the damning evidence: the text messages that hinted at eliminating Emma, the life insurance policy taken out just months before her death, and the inconsistencies in Mark and Lucy's stories. Reed argued that this was no spur-of-the-moment act of passion, but a meticulously planned crime that went awry when emotions spiraled out of control. He presented the knife, the shattered vase, and the forensic analysis that showed the wound angles and blood spatter patterns, evidence that suggested Emma fought for her life. Reed's opening statement was a masterclass in persuasion, setting the stage for a trial that would hinge on the psychological dynamics between Mark, Lucy, and Emma. He emphasized the financial motives, describing how Mark's mounting debts and desire for a fresh start with Lucy provided the perfect storm for murder. Reed's presentation was compelling, but the true weight of the prosecution's case came when Emma's closest friends and colleagues took the stand. They spoke of Emma's growing suspicions, her sense of betrayal, and her determination to confront Mark. Their testimonies painted a picture of a woman who, despite her outward success, was fighting a battle at home, a battle that would ultimately cost her life. One of the most compelling moments of the trial came when the prosecution played the recording from Emma's phone, a chilling audio clip that captured the argument, the escalating tension, and Emma's final, anguished scream. The courtroom fell silent as the recording played, the gravity of Emma's last moments hanging heavily in the air. Jurors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The reality of the crime laid bare in a way that no forensic evidence could fully capture. It was a powerful piece of evidence that underscored the violent end to Emma's life and the deliberate actions of those involved. However, the defense was prepared to fight back. Defense attorney Michael Thompson, known for his ability to sway even the most stubborn jurors, argued that Emma's death was a tragic accident born from a heated altercation. He portrayed Mark as a man trapped between two strong-willed women, overwhelmed by the conflict and desperate to defuse the situation. Thompson painted Lucy as a victim of circumstance, a woman caught in the crossfire of a volatile marriage and trying to navigate her own complex feelings. He argued that there was no premeditation, no plan to murder Emma, but rather a sequence of events that tragically spiraled out of control. Thompson's strategy relied heavily on attacking the credibility of the evidence. He questioned the reliability of the forensic analysis, suggesting that the chaotic nature of the altercation made it impossible to determine intent. He highlighted the absence of any direct evidence that Mark or Lucy had planned to kill Emma, arguing that the text messages were vague and open to interpretation. He also called on character witnesses who testified to Mark's and Lucy's generally peaceful and non-violent nature, trying to cast doubt on the prosecution's narrative of a cold-blooded plot. The defense's key witness was Mark himself. Taking the stand in a risky move, Mark portrayed himself as a man overwhelmed by the unraveling of his personal life. He recounted the events of that night, describing how he had only grabbed the knife to scare Emma, not to use it. His testimony was emotional. At times he broke down in tears, pleading with the jury to understand that he never intended for anyone to get hurt. But under cross-examination, the prosecution tore into his story, highlighting the inconsistencies and the cold, hard facts that contradicted his emotional plea. Lucy, on the other hand, chose not to testify, a decision that sparked speculation and murmurs among the courtroom spectators. Some saw it as a strategic move, while others interpreted it as an admission of guilt. The jury was left to ponder why Lucy, so central to the narrative, remained silent in her own defense. It was a silence that spoke volumes, and the prosecution capitalized on it, suggesting that Lucy's refusal to testify was an indication of her complicity and her fear of the truth being exposed under oath. As the trial drew to a close, both sides delivered their final arguments. The prosecution urged the jury to see through the facade of a tragic accident, highlighting the overwhelming evidence that pointed to premeditation and intent. The defense, meanwhile, implored the jury to consider the possibility of a tragic mistake, a split-second decision made in the heat of an emotionally charged moment. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, weighing the testimonies, the evidence, and the contrasting portrayals of the accused. On the afternoon of March 27, 2023, the jury returned with their verdict. The courtroom fell silent as the foreman read the decision: guilty of first-degree murder for Lucy Adams and accomplice charges for Mark Johnson. Lucy's face remained stoic as the verdict was read, while Mark broke down, burying his face in his hands. The judge sentenced Lucy to life in prison without the possibility of parole, reflecting the premeditated nature of her actions. Mark received a 25-year sentence, his role in the betrayal and murder deemed less direct but nonetheless complicit. The trial's outcome left a lasting impact on the community, a stark reminder of how quickly love and trust can turn deadly. Emma's death was not just a loss to her family, but a sobering example of the destructive power of jealousy, deceit, and ambition, as Lucy and Mark were led away in handcuffs. The story that had captured the public's imagination came to a close, but the questions it raised about human nature, loyalty, and betrayal lingered on. In the end, the courtroom drama laid bare the darkest sides of love, leaving everyone to wonder how a seemingly perfect life could unravel into such a tragic tale of blood and betrayal. As the courtroom doors closed behind Lucy Adams and Mark Johnson, the tragic saga that had captivated the town of Livingston, New Jersey, came to a sobering end. Emma Adams's death was a stark reminder of the consequences of unchecked emotions, jealousy, greed, and the desire for something that wasn't meant to be. The trial may have concluded, but the scars left behind by this twisted love triangle would linger long after the final verdict. Lucy Adams, once the quiet and overlooked sister, had found herself at the center of a storm of her own making. Her relationship with Mark started as an escape, a way to step out of Emma's shadow and claim something for herself. But what began as a forbidden romance quickly morphed into an obsession, clouding her judgment and leading her down a path from which there was no return. Lucy's life sentence without the possibility of parole was not just a punishment for her role in Emma's death. It was a grim acknowledgement of how far she had strayed from the person she once was. Mark Johnson, too, paid a heavy price for his choices. A man who once had it all: career success, a loving wife, and a seemingly perfect life, now faced 25 years behind bars for his complicity in the crime. Mark's involvement in the affair and the events leading up to Emma's death revealed a man who was willing to sacrifice his morals and his future for a fleeting chance at happiness. In the end, Mark lost everything: his freedom, his reputation, and the life he once knew. The 25-year sentence was a stark reminder that even in moments of desperation, our actions have consequences that we cannot escape. Emma Adams's legacy, however, is not defined by her tragic end, but by the life she lived: a life of achievement, strength, and resilience. Friends and colleagues remembered Emma as a bright star, someone who never shied away from challenges and who inspired those around her. Her death left a void that could never be filled, but her story serves as a powerful testament to the importance of integrity and the high cost of betrayal for Emma's family and friends. The trial's outcome brought a measure of justice, but the loss of Emma, a sister, a friend, a colleague, was a wound that would never fully heal. The case of Lucy Adams and Mark Johnson is a chilling reminder of how quickly lives can unravel when fueled by secrets and lies. It's a story that resonates with us all as we grapple with our own desires, fears, and the lines we may or may not be willing to cross. At its core, this tale is not just about murder. It's about the fragility of human relationships and the dark paths we can take when driven by our most base instincts. Lucy's longing to be seen, Mark's quest for escape, and Emma's fight to hold her life together each was caught in a web of their own making, unable to see the way out until it was too late. As we reflect on this twisted tale of love, lies, and betrayal, we're reminded of how fragile the bonds of trust can be. Emma's death wasn't just the result of a single moment of violence. It was the culmination of years of hidden emotions, unmet needs, and unchecked ambition. This story leaves us with a haunting question: how well do we really know the people closest to us? And what happens when the masks we wear begin to slip? For those left behind, the answers may never be clear. But the lessons of this tragic tale echo far beyond the walls of the courtroom. Thank you for watching this episode of True Crime Stories. If you found this story as shocking as we did, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and share with your friends. There are always more stories waiting to be uncovered, and the truth, no matter how deeply it's buried, will always find a way to the surface. Until next time, stay safe and stay vigilant.